Hello again. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Earthlings on planet Earth, wherever you may be. I remembered why I was going to tell you I cut my thumb off once. Firstly, thank you very, very much. All of the lovely messages saying get well soon and glad you're better and all that. I think that's what made me suddenly think of that episode in my life. It's only a short story, but I'm going to talk about some other stuff as well, if I've got enough time on my phone, because if the video is too long it splits it into more than one video. I don't know why. And then I'd have to put part 1 and part 2, and sometimes part 2 is only about 28 seconds long, so I'd better get on with it. I can't remember exactly which year it is, which is rather odd considering it was a bit of a traumatic thing to cut one's own thumb off. But my parents had these friends called the Lazaruses, and they had a fabulous swimming pool, and every year, they're all members of the Conservative Association, every year the Lazaruses would hold a pool party, which was the height. That was, well, it was for me. Absolutely loved it. It was an outdoor swimming pool, not heated, in Saltdean, I think. So you had to have balls of steel to get in that cold water, and me and my mum, we used to, and I designed my own swimming costume one year. Now, this whole story came to my mind because quite a few of you said, I hope you haven't had COVID. I don't think I have, because I've got my sense of taste and smell. And I'm not in any manner, shape or form belittling COVID or getting into the should you have the inoculation or not sort of territory at all. It's suddenly something of my gran I remembered. And my gran would have lived through the Spanish flu epidemic as well, because she was born in 1904. Anyway, so I designed my own swimming costume, and I was running late, and I knew that my dad was going to be at the door with the car, ring the bell, and I was trying to get the last few stitches in to design my swimming costume, and I was trying to get some cotton out of my mother had a drawer full of cottons, and it was just a big knot, and I couldn't get the cotton out, and because I was panicking and I lost my temper, I got the scissors, and I just frantically went snip at the whole cot, and I cut the top of I cut my thumb in half. Well, actually, it was, if I bite into it, you'll see how much. That much. I knew instinctively this is bad. So I picked up the thumb tip. I was in the living room in Lewes at 86 High Street. My gran was the only person home, and she was in the kitchen. And I raced through to the kitchen, and by the time I got there, I fainted. And she was like, "Whatever's the matter?" And my hand fell open, and my thumb tip rolled out of my hand and onto the kitchen floor. And she saw the blood, and she went, "Oh my good godfathers." Anyway, my gran's famous expression was, "We don't need to make a fuss." She sat me upright, she put the thumb tip back on, she wrapped a tissue round it quickly, and she said, "Hold that still and tight." She got me a glass of water, and I said, I daren't look, how bad is it?" And she said, "It'll be fine." She said, "Trust me, that'll glue back on, but what you mustn't do is go swimming in that pool." And I thought, no, I've been waiting all year, no way. Anyway, I insisted I would. She got some elastoplast, the thick bandagey stuff, she wrapped it right round, and she said, "When you're swimming, keep your thumb up out the water." And I did. I went swimming, so did my mum. My mother kept saying, what's up with your thumb? I said, "Don't ask," because my mother would faint at the sight of anything, any blood at all. And lo and behold, my gran was right. The top fell off, actually. It didn't take back. But the top of the thumb started to heal, and I'd gone right through the nail. About halfway down. Oh my God. Anyway, it did. I've still got a little dot to this day. Right on the end. Random story. There you go. But that was my gran. She'd say, "Don't make a fuss. Get some fresh air." She suffered horribly with arthritis, and she'd rub, I think it was witch hazel or something on it. She'd say, "I don't want to make a fuss. Don't make a fuss." And she'd be right as rain the next day. And so I always sort of been a bit like that, like my gran. But as I say, that's not to belittle the tragedy and the horrors of what we've all just been through as a planet on the whole. And the other thing I was going to talk about is when people behave like twats. Let me put it that way. I'm going to avoid the C word. Now, I know in the north of England, apparently a twat means a lady's front bottom. But where I'm from in the south, a twat means a prat, an idiot, a wally, someone who's not acting correctly. Okay, so I'm using it in that context, because I know people love to twist words these days. If people don't want to be seen as twats, or the C word, then basically my advice is don't behave like one. Don't behave like one in public, and don't behave like one privately when you think that you've got your anonymity, because maybe you don't have your anonymity. And ask yourself, would you be happy for the whole wide world to know that you acted like a twat? Certain people like Jimmy Savile, I'm sure he never thought anyone would find out what he'd been getting up to. But there's all kinds of twattiness people can get up to, isn't there? I mean, anonymous keyboard warriors. Or school teachers at a state school who thought they'd make an anonymous phone call to a newspaper, make up some shit about someone, create havoc in their life, and no one would ever find out. Well, sometimes people do find out. So if you don't want to be thought of as a twat or called a twat, don't act like a twat, in public or in private. And if you have acted like a twat, be like me and say, I was a twat, I shouldn't have done that, I said it and I shouldn't have done it. You know? But if you can't do that, just don't act like a twat. Now those school teachers, those left-wing school teachers, I'm pretty sure it was my art teacher actually, she particularly loved to go on and on and on about my mother's politics. Would she, for example, be happy if I was to go on television all these years later and say, this is what that twat did to me and my mother and my father because of her political beliefs? Would she be happy for that to all go out blah, 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 all over the TV? I dare say no. No, she probably wouldn't. She'd think, oh no, people will think bad of me. People will think I'm a twat. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been a twat. Well, we all have a choice, don't we? I mean, I've carried the can for, as you know, I was labelled Britain's Most Wanted Woman by firstly ITV and then the Daily Mail really adopted the title for me. Not the police, not the authorities, but the media. Oh, I really want that man with his angle grinder to fuck off. He's been at it since Monday and it's now Friday and I don't even know what he's grinding, but I want to... Do you think he heard me? Or is it lunchtime? Ugh, probably siesta. Anyway, yeah, so I've carried the can. I mean, I literally carried the can for a couple of other people. But I've carried the can in other ways. I accept everything is my fault. Everything is my fault. Back in the day when I was 15, according to the Daily Mail and the News of the World, my mother's political policies over education were my fault. I accept that. That's fine. I've carried that for, God now, what's that, 35 years. When I first came to Gibraltar, I got a job at the fabulous King's Bastion. And the company I was working for, they were being sued. Someone was suing them a year before we'd even moved to Gib. And what it was a man of colour had apparently, allegedly, been called a bad racist word by another employee. And this fella got it on tape recorder. Ooh, get out of that one. Do you know what I mean? So he'd been taking industrial action against the people I ultimately ended up working for. And I couldn't see how they were going to get out of it, but I never found out the upshot. I worked there for 9 months. And during the 9 months I was there, this whole thing was going on in the background, but I'd never met this fella, and I never met the fella that called him the name, and I didn't know the intricacies or all the ins and outs of it. Anyway, I then left and went to work for the Dolphin Safari, and about a year after I'd been at Safari, this court case came to fruition. And I spoke to my old boss from the bowling centre, and he said, I just wanted you to know that during the hearing they said that you were Britain's most wanted woman. And I said, what's that got to do with anything? I wasn't even working for you when this fella called this other fella a bad word. And I wasn't working for you when it all came to court. And he said, I know. But he said they found out, so the other side, they made a big do of it. It was all because you were Britain's Most Wanted. And I said, what the fuck? I'd never even met the guy. And also, when I was working at the bowling centre, Graham was working at Dolphin Safari, and he got into a ding-dong with this other fella. Again, absolutely nothing to do with me. I was working nights at the bowling centre. I was oblivious. I didn't even know this was going on. That turned into another court case, and ultimately there was a newspaper article all about it, all about Graham and this other fella and how they got into a ding-dong over an ABBA song. And it was a full front page on the Olive Press and a double spread inside, and it was all about Fiona was Britain's Most Wanted. And I thought, what the fuck has that got to do with anything? I wasn't even working at Dolphin Safari then. I was working at the bowling centre. What relevance has it got that I was... So, I've had this, and I'll have this to the day I die. Whatever happens... Oh my God, she was Britain's Most Wanted. Did you know that? Dial 999. She was Britain's Most Wanted. Did you know that? There was a train robbery apparently in the 1960s with Buster Edwards and Ronnie Biggs. That was years before I was born in 1970. But I bet that had something to do with Britain's Most Wanted Woman. Oh my God, quick, mention that. Now, my stepson, Richard, who I love dearly, and I'm not quite sure how old he is, actually, so I don't love him that much, but I do love Richard. I love Richard and Vicky, both Graham's children from a previous marriage. And they've had a very different upbringing and childhood, because Graham wasn't around. The mother and the stepfather didn't want him around. And they certainly didn't want me around, because I was Britain's Most Wanted Woman! Oh my God, I shouldn't laugh. It was poor old Vicky and Richard bore the brunt of it. We still don't know what happened to this day with either of those kids. But my stepdaughter Vicky is 9 years younger than me. So I'm 51. I'm 52 because it's 2022. So Vicky must be 43. And I think Richard is 5 years younger than Vicky. So I think he's 38. Now, Richard and I have never been particularly close. I mean, I love him. We get on very well. But we've never, we live thousands of miles apart. Because both Vicky and Richard, they're back in the UK. And as you know, we all live down here next to Jib. And I don't know what makes them tick. Years ago, Richard was very much, whatever the newspapers, whatever the authorities said, he would just blinkedly and blindly accept it as gospel. And then one day, he used to come out and visit us once a year. I said, you should be more questioning about things. So I do take responsibility for this. And so he did, and he's a very intelligent man. And he started to question literally everything, and he really got into David Icke. Now, I'm not dissing people who are into David Icke, okay? It's a thing. I've got a lot of friends who are into that, and I just sit and listen. Really, I don't criticise, I don't say anything. David Icke is not my cup of tea. He's one of these guys, he's making sense, then he starts talking about the Queen being a lizard and jumping down a tube to recharge herself from the Earth's core, and he immediately loses me, if you know what I mean. Well, unfortunately, Richard sort of went down that road. We're still not clear on what happened to this day. But it would appear that apparently he posted some... the allegation was anti-Semitic stuff on the internet. So I have to draw attention to this as his stepmother. And I've been wearing this since 2005. I don't know. Maybe he was having a dig at me. That's fine if he was, because I know Vicky and Richard have had a hard time. Not like our two, because our two have got their mum and dad together. We're a very secure family. It's not really been the case for Vicky and Richard. Anyway, he was sent to prison. He phoned us up when we were in the lockdown, and he said the police have been in. They've raided the house, and we all said, what for? We were on a speaker call, all four of us with him. And he said, I've said some stuff he didn't want to say, I suppose, again, because of this. Anyway, he was sent to prison. I think he got 4 years. And that was last December. It was just after, it was about 3 weeks after I'd made my very first YouTube video on this channel where I'd been talking about the importance of free speech and Remembrance Sunday. That's right, because I made my video, thank you Angle Grinder Man, I'd made my first video something like well, it would have been after Remembrance Sunday, so probably would have been out the 3rd week of November, and Richard was sent down in December. Oh, the irony. Anyway, apparently they wouldn't normally have sent him down, but the press were in the court. And of course they had to use the Britain's most, didn't they? I thought, here we go. They called him Britain's most anti-Semitic troll or something like that. You can look him up, Richard Hesketh. And we never saw any of his videos. We don't know what he said. We'll wait till he gets out, and then Richard will tell us himself what that was all about. And he might even make an appearance. I'd love it if he did, but, well, we'll see how he feels. So we could see they're already starting to make a connection. And maybe that is all my fault. His stepmother was Britain's most wanted. Maybe it was. It never ends. You know, if I get into a ding-dong with anybody on, I don't know, pointlessviews.com on a forum, and I always say who I am. I don't hide anything. I say, oh, it's Fiona Mont, whatever. They go, ha, you were Britain's most wanted woman. Good God. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. But I'm happy to carry that one. I'm more than happy to carry that one. But what I wanted... Not you lovely guys, because you lovely guys, you're out there and you come out with such wonderful comments, but it's really, this is more of a prophetic thing to the trolls. Are you okay to act like a twat, thinking you've got anonymity? Because I don't. I go out there and I say, I was Fiona Mont, I was Britain's most wanted woman, this is the story, I've got nothing to hide. Whereas you trolls seem to have a lot to hide, or you think you're hiding it. Are you okay? Are you really okay? Because I'm not going to dox anybody or put anyone out there, but these things tend to come out. Are you okay with all that? Everybody going, ooh, you were a twat. Just food for thought. I'd be very interested in any of your comments, and to polish it off, my boss also cut his thumb off. Me and Tim are sort of two peas in a pod, actually. He was working on the engine on the dolphin boat, and I think there was some sort of belt going. Anyway, snip, took his finger off. So he had to do the dolphin trip. He had customers waiting, so he wrapped his fingertip up in a hanky and put it in his pocket, and he did the dolphin trip, and he came back, and there was another dolphin trip, so he had to do that, and he came back, and then he went up to the hospital, and they said, well, you've left it too long, that's no good, we can't stick that back on. And his finger grew back. I think it was his middle finger. I'll have to ask him. And one of his fingers, and it grew back kind of wonky. I said, wow, Tim, that's a brilliant claim to fame, that. And do you know what? I always forgot to tell him I cut my own thumb off. Bloody hell, have any of you done that? That was fucking horrific. I tell you what, it's not something I'd want to live through again. Good God. Anyway, putting it all out there today. For now, that shower was amazing. I hope you're all having a fabulous day wherever you are on planet Earth. I will see you below.